Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Monday, December 9th, 2024. This is the Excerpt. Today, we have the latest from Syria after longtime President Bashar Assad fled, plus how some Democrats indicate their support for Trump picks and initiatives, and how colleges are shifting guidance for students who could be impacted by Trump immigration policies. The people of Syria begin this Monday entering a new, uncertain era. Syrian rebels seized the capital Damascus yesterday, and longtime President Bashar Assad has fled the country amid the collapse of his regime after 13 years of war. Assad and his family arrived in Russia, granted asylum on humanitarian grounds, Russian news agencies reported yesterday, citing a Kremlin source. Rebel forces led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, an Islamist movement that was once an al-Qaeda affiliate, declared in a statement on state-owned TV that Syria was free from the tyrant Assad. The rebel coalition said it was working to complete the transfer of power to a transitional governing body with executive powers to rule the country. President Joe Biden was monitoring the events in Syria, the White House said, while President-elect Donald Trump said the U.S. should not get involved. Biden yesterday also said his administration is still trying to return Austin Tice to his family, referring to the former U.S. Marine missing in Syria since 2012. Assad's downfall also marks the latest development in one of the deadliest civil wars of the 21st century. The war began amid the 2011 Arab Spring pro-democracy protests that quickly led to the fall of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak and Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said earlier today that the international community was surprised by the speed of opposition forces in Syria. You can stay up on the latest developments with a link in today's show notes. Democrats are signaling support for certain Donald Trump picks and initiatives ahead of his next term. I spoke with USA Today Congress campaigns and democracy reporter Sadiksha Kochi for more. Sadiksha, thanks for hopping on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Sadiksha, we know this is a tense time ahead of the next administration. We know Democrats are trying to find some leverage on Capitol Hill ahead of what will be a minority in both chambers. And they are increasingly giving some nods to some Trump nominees. Let's start with Lori Chavez-DeRemer. Who is she? What's she been tapped for? And really, how are Democrats responding?
She represents currently Oregon's 5th congressional district. So she actually lost her bid for re-election. She ran in a very tight race and her Democratic opponent ended up winning. What's interesting about her, though, is that she was tapped by President-elect Donald Trump to be the labor secretary. She's actually very pro-union. She was one of the 3 Republican House co-sponsors of a sweeping pro-union bill called Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which was aimed at expanding labor protections for individuals to collectively organize and bargain. And what's interesting is that Senator Elizabeth Warren had already come out to support her. She said in a statement on Tuesday that if Chavez-DeRemer commits as labor secretary to strengthen labor unions and promote worker power, she's a strong candidate for the job. That's very significant because she could get a lot of Democratic support here. Now, the other thing is that she could also lose some Republican votes when the confirmation process comes. Some more partisan Republican members, obviously in the Senate, would not support her just because of her pro-union stance.
You know, Sadiksha, one of the big buzzwords ahead of this next administration has been DOGE. That's the Department of Government Efficiency. Just remind us, what this is, what it aims to do, and how are Democrats responding here? What are we hearing?
So Trump tapped Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to head the Department of Government Efficiency, and it's really aimed at cutting government spending. And right after he made that decision, the House and Senate actually each launched their own mini caucuses to also promote government efficiency. So Representative Jared Moskowitz was the first Democrat to join the House caucus. It's called Delivering Outstanding Government Efficiency Caucus. He was followed by Representative Greg Landsman of Ohio. So the caucus is not obviously a formal committee, but they will have a say in, how to promote government efficiency. And so the House caucus is being led by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a conservative firebrand. And the fact that Moskowitz joined is a very significant deal. On Wednesday, he also urged other Democratic colleagues to follow suit. And he said that being at the table allows them to have a voice and allows them to have a chance to fight back against ideas that they don't agree with. On the Senate side, Senator Bernie Sanders wrote on X he agreed with Elon Musk's kind of backing for the new department's mission, specifically when it comes to re-examining the Pentagon's budget. And he had mentioned that there needs to be a lot of cutting when it comes to military spending, which was interesting. Senator Fetterman said that with DOGE, the concept of government spending is not just a Republican effort. It should be a bipartisan effort. And so it does seem like a lot of Democrats are welcoming this idea. A lot of Democrats are joining these caucuses, and we can expect to see more of that in the coming weeks and months.
So, you mentioned Elise Stefanik and Marco Rubio. How do they factor into this conversation around bipartisanship?
Elise Stefanik and Marco Rubio have been some of those picks that could actually easily sail through the confirmation process. It seems like a lot of Democrats are very open to the idea of having Elise Stefanik serve as UN ambassador and then Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, which is what President-elect Donald Trump had tapped both of them for. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania said that he's open to many of the picks and that there's some that he's likely to vote no and then others that he's going to enthusiastically vote yes for. Stefanik, Chavez, DeRemer, and Rubio, he said, were all solid picks. And so it does seem like those two in particular, Stefanik and Rubio, would sail smoothly through the confirmation process.
Sadiq Kochi covers Congress campaigns and democracy for USA Today. I thank you, Sadiq, so much for coming on and discussing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
President-elect Donald Trump said he will begin his first day in office by pardoning rioters from the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. He told NBC's Meet the Press in an interview that aired yesterday, quote, "I'm going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases. I'm going to be acting very quickly. I'm looking first day," unquote. The ongoing prosecution of the people who violently entered the U.S. Capitol to try to block Congress's certification of the 2020 election is the most sprawling federal investigation in U.S. history. Officials say they expect to arrest up to 1,000 more people. Trump has long said he wanted to pardon people convicted of crimes related to the Capitol riot on his first day in office. During his re-election campaign, Trump repeatedly referred to the jailed insurrectionists as political prisoners treated unfairly by an unjust system. His comments also come after President Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, who was convicted of federal gun felonies and federal tax charges earlier this year. Trump told Meet the Press there may be some exceptions to his pardons if somebody was radical, crazy. But Trump did not rule out pardoning individuals who pleaded guilty, including when host Kristen Welker asked him about people who had admitted to assaulting police officers. Trump claimed they had no choice. Ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House, colleges are shifting their guidance for students who could be impacted by the harsh immigration restrictions he's promised to enact. I spoke with USA Today education reporter Zach Shermley to learn more. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Taylor.
So, Zach, let's just start with the Trump side of this. I mean, what has his rhetoric really been on immigration? What did we see him do regarding immigration his first time in office?
Immigration is arguably President-elect Trump's biggest issue, right? It's something he cares very deeply about, and he talks about, frankly, all the time. He's promised to carry out mass deportations once he takes office, though the extent of how he could actually reform the nation's immigration system in his first few weeks and months is still kind of unclear. What we do know is that during his first term, he didn't just try to stop illegal immigration. He also slowed and, for lots of people, really upended legal entry into the U.S. for foreign visitors and some students reliant on visas. So after he issued that travel ban affecting several Muslim majority countries in January 2017, some international students in unique situations, they were left stranded abroad for various reasons. Many students couldn't go home for holiday breaks or feared doing so, and we're seeing some of that fear start to return.
Yeah, so amid some of that fear, Zach, how are colleges and universities responding when it comes to, protecting international students ahead of January?
Yeah, some colleges are already shifting their guidance for students who could be impacted by some of these potentially harsher restrictions in terms of entry into the US. So, some schools have issued travel advisories to their foreign students, urging them to return home from any international holiday travel before Trump's second term begins in January. So, those schools include Cornell University, for example. Their administrators predicted that a travel ban is likely to go into effect after the inauguration. Yale University, the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Wesleyan, MIT, lots of other schools are doing those same types of issuances of travel advisories.
And what are some of the potential complications, even for domestic students, Zach, especially as it pertains to federal student aid?
Right, Taylor. So the other concern I'm hearing about has to do with students from mixed status families. So that means students whose family members have different citizenship statuses. Despite the barriers that these students already face to attending college, hundreds of thousands of them submit applications for federal student aid annually. But over the last year, as you'll recall, there were all these widespread glitches with the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. And students from mixed status families were hit harder by these delays and glitches, arguably, than any other student group. And now college counselors and advocacy groups say that they're starting to encounter a new wariness about applying for financial aid among these students, because despite a lot of the longstanding protections that are afforded to them by federal privacy laws, some students and parents think that if they're going to be submitting their information to the government indicating that one of the members of their household doesn't have a social security number, that could be an indication to government officials that they're undocumented, and that's caused some fear. A lot of it is based on conjecture, though. I think that's really important to point out. And again, federal law requires that information to only be used for financial aid. So there's not any precedent that those anxieties are based on.
It's a distressing time for those folks, though. So what's next, Zach? I mean, we're a few weeks out from this Trump term. I know we're kind of in a liminal period for college terms, depending on the school. What's next for this conversation going forward?
Well, I think we can divide this into two buckets, right? So on the international student front, these anxieties are coming as a record number of international students are actually enrolled in U.S. colleges. And that's a shift from a couple of years of decline that even predated the pandemic, but then the pandemic exacerbated it. So we'll have to see whether or not those numbers shift at all as a result of some of the concerns from international students. And I think it's really important to keep in mind that these were the types of students that face already a lot of barriers to post-secondary education, to earning a credential, despite the fact that they can benefit from a college degree greatly. They were hit really hard in the last enrollment cycle, and they're staring down a lot of anxiety in yet another cycle. These are the types of families you have to remember that the smallest barrier can be the difference between them going to college or not.
Folks can find this full piece with a link in today's show notes. Zach Shermley covers education for USA Today. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Taylor.
Federal and state officials say pasteurized milk available in grocery stores is safe from bird flu, but caution that raw milk is not. The H5N1 bird flu virus was first identified in America's milk supply earlier this year, but the virus researchers found was dead, killed by the rapid heating of pasteurization. That's when officials began warning people to avoid raw milk. On Friday, officials decided to step up testing of milk on farms, both to keep the public from swallowing the virus and to more quickly identify its spread among farms. And there is no doubt that some unpasteurized milk contains H5N1 virus. Last week, California public health officials announced a voluntary recall by Raw Farm LLC after detecting the virus in raw milk and cream at company bottling and storage sites. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your pods, and if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.